In this video, I'm going to give you my review of the new Diadem Axis 100. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Brody Taylor. I have been working in a tennis retail store for the past 7+ years, as well as I am a certified MRT or Master Racket Technician, which is essentially just a fancy way of saying I took a test about tennis rackets, tennis strings, how they work when you put them together and how to string them. And I passed it to become one of, I think, with like 650 in the world. So with that being said, this is the Diadem Axis. And obviously, big things that we need to know. First off, it's in the name of it. It's a 100 square inch head size. So this is going to be a little bit more friendly for both spin, for power, and just as a racket overall. If you are wanting to be a little bit more, have a racket that's going to help you a little bit more, that's where the Diadem Axis can come in. Now, one of the ways it also helps with that is by the string pattern. Now, the string pattern in the Diadem Axis 100, this is the standard 16x19. Pretty common, pretty open string pattern, very easy for the strings to move around it to help generate spin, help generate a little bit more pace and power onto the ball. So, pretty standard setup, no matter what racket you look at, even compared to the Diadem Axis. Now, the unstrung weight, we do have about 10.6 ounces unstrung, or about 300 grams. Again, pretty standard. You'll notice that as I keep going down this list more and more, you'll start to realize this sounds like a very, very similar racket, which I'll get to right here in the compare to, but stick with me for a little bit. So then we have the strung weight of about 11.2 ounces, or about 315 to 318 grams. So this is pretty much the standard weight for a fully grown male adult player. That just seems to be the standard that most of the racket companies are finding. And so that's why the Diadem team also does make this in a lighter weight version if you do want something that may not be this heavy, but we're talking about the regular 100 today. So the stiffness, which is going to be not the most stiff thing in the world, especially for the racket we're going to compare it to, but overall on average, the stiffness is about a 63. Now, the higher you go up in that number towards 70 or even above 70, the harder the racket is going to be on your arm. 63, it's nothing to laugh at. It's not going to be like the most hard thing on your arm, but I definitely wouldn't just buy this thing outright without trying it, especially because that can sometimes cause arm issues or problems if you're not used to something that is this stiff. So demo it if you can. 90% of the time, I'm always going to say that. Very rarely will I ever say just buy a racket. And then the type of racket, as you may have figured out, if you can guess what this racket is based off of from these qualities already, or if you've heard anything about it. This is a spin racket. So usually with spin rackets and with the Diadem Axis, the strings are spaced out a little bit more from each other, just so that way the strings can move a little bit easier and help to generate that spin. They also, here in the throat, if you see how it's kind of like that weird shape, this shape on the racket also helps to make the racket a little bit more aerodynamic when you actually swing through the air with it. So the big thing, and the big kicker, why I saved this for last, this shape is very similar, and the big thing that you can really compare to in order to understand what this racket is supposed to be. Now, if you figured it out, congratulations, you figured it out early. But if you didn't know, the Diadem Axis, you compare this thing to the Babolat Pure Aero. In my opinion, this thing is almost a carbon copy of the Pure Aero, but on average about a little bit stiffer, so a little bit easier on your arm. So if you're looking for the spin racket that you know you love the Pure Aero, but it's just a little bit too hard on your arm, or you just want a little bit of a different feel, or if you're just someone who's like, I don't want to play with Babolat because I want to be different, then the Diadem Axis might be something for you to look into. But let's go onto the court first and see actually how it plays and feels. We'll be right back. Now, the Diadem Axis 100, we are out on court. So initially when I first was trying this racket, me and the racket, we were not having a good time together. But that's just me. I personally don't use spin rackets that much just because I tend to hit the ball a lot more flat, and the extra spin, the extra launch angle, and the extra lift on the ball tends to work a little bit against my stroke. But once I figured out how to dial it in, especially with the Axis, everything worked out pretty a-okay from that point on. So, as you can see with that volley, This racket, in my opinion, it's very stable, even though it is only a 300-gram unstrung weight or a 10.6-ounce unstrung weight. It's very stable, so at the net, it did well as it's very easy to plow through the ball and really just drive the ball deep into the court with this racket. Now, the extra spin coming from a little bit extra string spacing, that's going to help to bring the ball down, especially if you do have a more spin-focused string like a polyester. Sometimes Diadem, their actual polyester strings will work better. Some people will prefer other strings, but that's just all personal preference at that point. So, with the Diadem Axis overall, it's a good all-around spin racket. I would say, even though it is a little bit softer on the arm than the pure Aero, I think it's still definitely very playable just like it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is the best point right here. Look at that lob. I got to say, pretty great if I do say so myself. And I was only able to hit that because of the amount of spin I was able to put onto the ball to bring it down into the back court because of the Diadem Axis. So, if you are considering trying out the Diadem Axis, I would at least give it a demo, but do not go based off of first impressions. This is a racket I think you need to try multiple times before you make your decision. Now that we're back from the court with the Diadem Axis 100, here are some final thoughts. Now, I personally, when I first hit with this racket, I wasn't the biggest fan just because it was not pretty. I couldn't hit a ball really well. Wasn't really playing the best. Now, granted, that a lot of that was also just footwork and me, but me and the racket, we didn't vibe, we didn't gel correctly in the beginning. But after the first hitting session, I was like, okay, I'm going to hit with it again, make sure. Then everything started to settle in. It is very easy to generate power. It's very easy to generate spin, whether it be your forehand, your backhand, or anything else. And especially coming from Diadem, with them not really having a spin-focused racket in their lineup as of yet. They have had the Diadem Elevate and the Diadem Nova, which both are being the control and the power rackets respectively. I think the Axis is a great addition to the lineup and something that they were missing, especially to compete with other rackets like the Babolat Pure Aero, like the Yonex V-Core 100, like the Dunlop SX 300, and even the Head Extreme NP. So, with that being said, I would say the Diadem is definitely worth a demo. If you do love the Diadem rackets, let me know down below how long you've been using it and what your thoughts are on the actual Diadem Axis itself. I'd love to know what you think, as well as just subscribe to the channel so that we can grow this channel, get the information out there from the people that have it to the people that need it. There's a lot of misinformation in the tennis community, so I took it upon myself so that we can get rid of that and just enjoy the game of tennis that we all love so much more without having to worry about injury from our gear. So, with that being said, as always, take care.